Chapter 15. All Eyes on Me Tour. When we left California for a couple of spot dates, our first stop was Cleveland, Ohio. Just about all of the artists on the label went on the road with Pac, Snoop, The Dogg Pound, Michelle, The Outlaws, OFTB, and a few other artists. We didn't go anywhere without the homies with us. It was a good time, but by sound check, we were all smashed. When Michelle came out onto the stage, she was supposed to ride out on a 3-wheeled bike. She came riding the bike from behind the stage and completely rode off of the ramp that she was on. We cracked up laughing. Well, after we helped her up, she was lucky that it was a ramp and not a high stage, or else she would have been singing a whole other tune. On the way back to the hotel, it was snowing heavily. The radio station was reporting a snowstorm. We were literally walking in snow that came up to our knees. We thought the show might be canceled, or that few people would come out, but the fans showed up. They were determined to see Pac. When Pac and the Outlaws hit the stage, the crowd went crazy. But before Pac started his second song, somebody had thrown a crutch up onto the stage. Pac told the DJ to stop the music. "I'll give $5,000 to the person who will tell me who threw it," Pac said to the crowd. Man, it had to be about 5,000 people pointing in the same direction. Pac threw a wad of money into the crowd, and the homie snatched the dude up out of there quicker than you could blink your eye. That dude probably don't do shit now but go to jazz concerts. The next morning, we were on our way to the next city. When we got to the airport, flights were being pushed back because of the weather. After some hours, we finally boarded our flight. Everything was fine until we had to sit on the runway for another hour. I went into my bag and pulled out 2/5 of Crown Royal. I was passing it out when one of the stewardesses tried to catch us up, but I was the only one that got caught with my drink out. The stewardess saw me and said, "Sir, you can't bring drinks aboard this plane." We were on our way down the runway when I started going off on her. She made a phone call, and the next thing I knew, they were turning the plane around. We were headed back to the gate. About 5 police and sheriffs got on the plane. "Young man in the red sweater, come to the front of the plane," they said. When I stood up, our publicist, George Price, walked up to talk to them. If George hadn't stepped up, I think they would have locked me up. Instead, they made us all get off the plane. Everybody was mad at me because it was the last flight of the night. We had to wait until the next day to get a flight, and that meant we would be sleeping in the halls of the terminal until it was time to go. They were hot as hell, but they knew they couldn't say nothing to me, or they were going to have a problem with Suge. And if Suge had a problem, the big homies would solve it. Ain't nobody have time for the big homies. I felt bad, but I continued to put my arrogance on full display. I kept laughing and talking shit as I walked through the halls of the terminal. We went to several other cities and did some shows at smaller venues. During this time, All Eyes on Me was being mixed and mastered. When we returned to LA, Pac went to the desert to shoot the California Love video. It was directed by his friend, Jada Pinkett Smith. Interscope and Deathrow were preparing to release it. They had a big campaign and promotion going on. Shortly after the filming of the video, Suge, Pac, The Outlaws, and some more of us went back to New York for Pac's appearance on Saturday Night Live. I ended up finding out that I was going to be singing with Pac. It was the first time I was actually scared to sing. All I could hear on the production speakers was, "Countdown. We're going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We barely made it out of wardrobe before they were pushing us out toward the stage. When the lights came on, people were clapping. Pac was going hard. I was sitting with Big Syke on the stage behind Pac. When it was my turn, I was trying to stay in the background, not trying to do too much. But Syke was like, "Go on, D." Then Pac fumbled over one of the parts in the verse, and I came in to help him. "I ain't mad at Cha," I sang. After he did his next verse, he put me on. "This is 17-year-old Danny Boy from Chicago," he said. He shined his light on me in that moment. I had his back, and he had mine. I was still scared, but I did my best to represent. I was finally starting to feel like a celebrity. All of my family was back in Chicago watching me perform live. My grandmother even let my little cousin stay up late to see it, and she watched it with them. I never saw my grandmother watch anything other than Reverend Clay Evans or TBN. I was satisfied enough just to know that she was watching me. That was large in itself. Chapter 16. Slip and Slide. After putting in so much work in the studio, it was finally time for me to see the treatment for the Slip and Slide video. They presented storyboards explaining the concept of the video. They were impressive, but the kicker was the location. Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Suge put a lot of money into this shoot. He was dead set on his vision of me walking on water. It would require a large piece of plexiglass suspended over the ocean. There was little time to prepare. I had to rush my passport application in order to leave on time. The following week, Trina and I were working to get everything at the house in order. Our nanny was going to be staying at our house to care for Ashley while we were away in Mexico. We quickly hosted a casting call to find my leading lady and a few extras. We ended up choosing about 80 girls. In preparation for the shoot, I met with the wardrobe stylist. She pulled some nice looks for the shoot. She even had custom underwear with my name on them. When it was time to leave, Deathrow had 2 airplanes full of our people. Now that doesn't even count the private flights that brought Tupac, Snoop, The Dog Pound, Nate Dogg, DJ Quick, Casey and JoJo, Aaron Hall, and whoever else they wanted to bring. That was how we rolled. You brought your people with you. Suge, David Kenner, Michelle, Trina, and I flew in on a small passenger jet. We were eating, chilling, and listening to music when we landed at the airport in Mexico. We arrived to police escorts, who took me and my girl to our villa. Suge had rented a big house that he and Michelle stayed in. David Kenner stayed on his boat. My stylist flew in with about $50,000 worth of clothes, but she neglected to declare their value to customs, and they confiscated everything. My clothes, my shoes, and everything she had customized for me was gone too. She had to turn around and go back to the States and grab whatever she could to make the shoot. It was tight because we would be filming the next afternoon. Boy, when you have money, you can make just about anything happen. She was back just in time for me to do my thing. The first scenes we shot were in the jungle. After that first scene, my girl went off on me because she thought I was doing too much with my leading lady. I was kissing and grinding on her. But that was part of the performance. The next day, I left her at the villa with my assistant while I shot my scenes. The next scene was the one with me on the water. You'll walk out in the middle of the water, do a little dancing, and walk towards the camera, the director said to me. I didn't have a problem with that. It seemed easy, except for the dancing part. I wasn't much of a dancer. I was cool throughout the entire makeup and hair sessions, but when they told me I'd have to take a dinghy out to the location, I started to rethink the entire scene. The distance was too far, and I couldn't swim. I wasn't having it. It took the crew 20 minutes to assure me that everything would be okay. When my makeup and hairstylist and I got on the dinghy with the driver, I had my life jacket on under my actual jacket. There were scuba divers swimming around the sides of the plexiglass just in case I fell in. They didn't have to worry about me falling in, because I had no intention of getting out of the boat. I was scared. Some of the guys eventually helped me out of the boat. When I stood on the plexiglass, it moved. I felt like I was about to have a heart attack. I started encouraging myself. I'm good. I got this. Once I got up the courage to stand up in the middle of the water, the director yelled, "Have Danny Boy take off the life jacket. It's making him look too bulky." When he said that, I wanted to change my mind about singing, because they wanted me to take the vest off and get off the dinghy. Shit. That was my protection. I wasn't dying that day for nothing and nobody. Finally, the divers came to me and explained that they would be swimming along the edges of the plexiglass. With that assurance, I went ahead and gave them all the shots they needed. Now that it's all said and done, I think that it was a stupid scene. It was a great concept, but I should have never let them convince me to dance. It was money wasted. We should have just cut the scene. What makes it even worse is, I actually look like I can't dance. I was walking on water, just like Suge said I would. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get off of that boat and get back to land. Later that night, we shot a scene on a submarine. It was a real submarine too. We had to climb on top in order to get in. We were floating on water, and then all of a sudden we were underwater. I was at the window looking at how deep we were going. I could see all kinds of fish and things swimming around that I had never seen in my life, not even on TV. The next morning, we ate breakfast at Suge's rental house, while the maids were at the villa cleaning. My boy, Kurt Cobain, and my friend Troy were flying in to hang with me. The production van took me to pick them up from the airport. I had known Troy since OR. I'd met Kurt one day when I was leaving the studio. He had told me that he produced records. When we were leaving one day, I noticed that he was sleeping in his truck. It was broken down, and he couldn't get it started. He told me that he ran out of money and that he had been sleeping in his truck for the last week. I didn't know the man from Adam, but I put him and Troy in my car and welcomed them into our home. We'd been friends from that day on. I was happy to have Kurt and Troy with me in Cabo. After I picked up my boys, we headed back to the video set in Mexico. When we pulled up to the set, the streets were blocked off. The driver said to the guards, "This is Danny Boy." After that, they let us in immediately. We finished shooting early that day because everybody was going to meet up at the club to celebrate the video and the success of Pac's album. We rented every scooter, golf cart, and dune buggy they had in Cabo. We got in the club and were partying, and everything was going smooth. We had the bar tied down. We bought the bar out, and it was open to any and everybody in there. There were so many people. Most I didn't recognize. There were like 40 Crips and 60 Bloods, 2 rival gangs in one place. I knew something bad was going to happen. The locals probably had never seen that many niggas at once. Suj and I were standing by the door, talking to some of the big homies, when an older lady made a smart remark to one of Suj's homies. The guy just started banging on that lady. It was obvious that he had never been further than Vegas. He slapped that lady right off her feet. While she was on the floor, he was yelling at her, "Bitch, get up! I dare you! This Piru, get up!" he said, screaming his gang's name. The other big homies had to come get him off of her. They quickly rushed him and took him out of the bar. I don't think he even realized just how fast the authorities would lock him up. Over the next few days, we shot more scenes. On our last day of shooting, we were on Sug's boat, P-Funk. It was hard to concentrate on the scene because every girl on the boat was topless. All I could think about was the after party. The final scene of the night was a party scene. I hadn't realized how many people Shuj had flown down until I pulled up and got off the golf cart. Everywhere I looked, people were standing. It looked like a huge-ass block party. All of the people that flew on the private jet had people with them. Pac, Snoop, The Dog Pound, DJ Quick, and OFTB. It looked like a scene in Boys in the Hood. The leading lady and I had to take off everything that we had on, jewelry and all. The camera would pan across the sand to give the illusion that we were somewhere having sex. They were shooting that scene at one end of the beach, and she and I were shooting at the other end. When the producers yelled rap, the entire crew was happy to be done. The video had taken a week and a half to shoot. It was time to celebrate. I hadn't seen my boys, Troy and Kurt, since earlier that day. My assistant, Dion, had taken off with my camera and was having his own little photo shoot. "Can you snap this for me right quick?" he'd ask random people. I didn't have one picture on my camera for memories. Deathrow had their photographer take pictures, but I never had the opportunity to see them either. When I went back to pick up my jewelry, I noticed that the assistant director was looking around like he had lost something. In fact, everyone was looking nervous. That made me nervous because nobody was walking up to me handing me my jewelry. Dion walked up to the director and started cursing at him about my shit. Then I started going off on him. "Why in the hell weren't you being an assistant and watching my shit?" I asked him, "You are here to assist. My job is to do what I'm doing, and your job is to do what I need you to do." I was mad as hell because my watch, chain, and 2 rings had vanished. I had lost nearly $30,000 in jewelry. I was so mad that I made the guy that was driving the cart get off. I drove off and left Dion standing right there with him. An hour later, Suj pulled up in this van and asked me, "Danny boy, who got your shit, blood?" I was looking crazy, he was looking crazy, and he had about 100 homies with him. He got out of the van, and we all started mobbing toward the area where my jewelry was. Everybody saw that Suj was coming and that he was pissed off. The homies started checking everybody that didn't walk up with us. I looked around and Dion, my so-called assistant, was nowhere to be found. Sug walked up to Troy and Kurt. As soon as he walked up, he got in Troy's face. He said to Troy and Kurt, "You niggas ain't never been nowhere for real. Danny boy gave y'all the opportunity to come, and he treating y'all to everything, and neither one of y'all helped keep up with his shit. His shit missing, and y'all gotta pay for it." I knew Shuj wasn't talking about money because they didn't have shit. They were living off of me. I was taking care of them. These were my people. Troy was skinny as hell. Probably weighed no more than 100 pounds. He was shaking and apologizing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Knight." Kurt was high as hell, and when Suj got in his face, he smirked. Somebody out of the crowd reached over and hit Kurt in the mouth. Blood was everywhere. He was in a daze and scared as hell. "This some bullshit. So you gonna do my people like this?" I said as Suj was holding me. Pac and Hammer were grabbing Troy and Kurt. Pac said, "Danny boy, you want somebody to check they people when they out of order, but you ain't saying that now because it's your people." I told Pac to shut his ass up. We were friends, but this wasn't the way to handle things. Pac and Sug had Troy's little ass standing in between them. They started asking Troy who looked like they'd been working out. Troy was scared to answer because he knew that regardless of who he picked, the other one was going to be on some bullshit. Hammer was by the sink jumping around like he was in a boxing ring, putting on the gloves with the fingertips out. "We gon' fuck him up if Danny boy don't," Suj said laughing. I thought Troy was about to get a beatdown until Suge said to me, "You take care of your people, or we will." Troy was crying. He looked at me and said, "Danny boy, please, you do it." I made it look like I punched Troy in his chest, but what I really did was push him really hard with my fist. That was enough for Suge and Pac. They walked away, and Hammer followed behind them. When Troy got up off the floor, he ran to me and gave me a hug. I wasn't going to let them hurt my boy. I wasn't worried about Kurt. He was standing outside with a swollen lip. When I got back to my villa, Dion wasn't there. I didn't think he had the jewelry, but he was still in violation for spending $7,000 on a private flight back to LA. He got out of there fast because he was scared of getting his ass whooped in Mexico.